Of Jesus' life and death, we need to look further at the biblical accounts of the resurrection. It was here in Jerusalem that Jesus was crucified, and according to the scriptures, rose again from the dead. But in Jerusalem, one is forced to remember that we do not live on a Christian planet. Hundreds of millions of Jews and Muslims may accept that Jesus lived and died in first century Palestine, but only Christians believe he rose from the dead. This is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, built upon what was supposed to be the tomb in which Jesus was laid after the crucifixion. This, according to devout Christians, is the exact site of the resurrection. And if anything can be described as the cornerstone of the Christian faith, it is the resurrection.
The resurrection of Jesus, as far as all the Christian churches are concerned, is absolutely fundamental to the faith. There's no question, in my mind, that it's ever going to be changed.
The resurrection may be fundamental to the faith, but in our examination of what really happened, it's hard to find solid historical evidence. The four Gospels all tell different stories.
When we read the resurrection narratives, it's like reading four different reports of the same football game in four rather different newspapers. And the fact that actually there may be some disagreement about whether it was a foul or not doesn't mean that there wasn't a game and that somebody didn't win it, and so on. If one of them says there were two angels and another one says there was one angel, if one of them says Mary Magdalene was there all by herself and somebody else says Mary Magdalene was there with one or two other women, then these are the sorts of variations that you expect to get, like the different newspaper reports, the football match. And they're not something that should worry you to the point of saying, therefore nothing happened. That would be quite a false conclusion.
But in the earliest versions of the earliest Gospel, Mark, there are no resurrection appearances at all. The Gospel simply ends with the discovery of an empty tomb. The last verses of Mark, which do contain resurrection stories, were added 200 years later.
None of the Gospel stories is CNN in Jerusalem in the year 30.
The Gospels are written in the form of historical biography, so many people have assumed that they are exactly that. But that's not actually what they are. They're written to demonstrate to people the importance and the meaning of Jesus and his teaching. That was what they're for, and they do that very well. But they're not primarily interested in what actually happened back there.
Matthew and Luke do have resurrection appearances, but they don't agree about the details. In Matthew, Jesus meets the women near the tomb, and then meets his disciples just one time, and that is on a mountain in Galilee. In Luke, Jesus meets two unnamed disciples who do not recognize him, and then with the 11 remaining disciples before leaving them in a village outside Jerusalem. The last Gospel, John, has many different resurrection stories. For many modern scholars, these variations suggest that the stories were not written to tell of a miraculous event, but with an entirely different and political motive. For it was the supposed witnesses of the resurrection who became the leaders of the early church. Even to this day, the Pope claims his authority in a direct, unbroken line of ordination from Peter, the first disciple said to have seen the risen Christ.